just riffing off yesterday a little bit, show me something I haven't seen before. I think what that does is it's incumbent then on the photographer to push themselves harder than the cliche or the easy shot. In most of the photography that I think is going to win out there, it's not the easy shot that's going to make the difference, especially in commercial photography or editorial photography. We're trying to sell your creative abilities, your abilities to solve problems. The easy shot isn't going to work. If the job is to shoot a can of hairspray or a bottle of wine, and you just set it there and put a light on it and take a picture, how is that better than them getting a CGI representation of it? How is that better than them just doing it themselves? One of the things I tell my photography students is, you've got to show me a picture that my mom couldn't do on her iPhone, or that your mom couldn't do on her iPhone. So I say, picture this. Your neighbor just got a Rebel or a Nikon, or maybe they got a cool little Fuji for Christmas, and they've got a lens for it, and they're just out taking pictures of kids and stuff and just having a ball. They have no idea how to use the camera to its potential. They're just having fun with it. Nothing wrong with that at all. My question is, the photograph you do for your portfolio, could they have done that photograph? If the answer is yes, we got a problem. Because if that's as far as you're willing to push your own work to be as good as somebody who's only been shooting for 4 months, that's not pushing hard enough. That's not trying hard enough. That's not, grasping the situation that we have in front of us, which is to make a unique and compelling image. It's so easy to make photographs these days. And I know some people would argue with me, but I'm sorry, that it's easy. It's really easy compared to how difficult it was to make photographs 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, it was a hell of a lot easier than it was 30 years before that. And that was a hell of a lot easier than it was at the turn of the century. It's become easier and easier because it's an art form based on technology. It's just as hard to do a jeté and a leap as ballet. It's just as hard to play a violin today as it was 50 years ago, but it's not as hard to make a photograph. We can grab one of these and we can walk out the door and we can make a photograph. A pretty good photograph, actually. A photograph that meets whatever criteria we may want to apply to it. But it's got to go more than just, is it sharp, and is it in focus, and is it got good color? Because it's a no-brainer now. We can do that. The idea that we can make a better photograph starts with us understanding our gear, our limitations, and what's inside of us as far as a desire to push ourselves to do something really, really hard. And you know what's really, really hard? To take an amazing or unique photograph these days. A photograph, easy. A photograph that means something, much harder. A photograph that means something and speaks volumes to what it means, way the hell harder. Because as the bar for technology goes down, the bar for saying something important goes up. And I'm not talking about making photographs that are like earth-changing or life-changing, or, the famous photograph that Eddie Adams took of the South Vietnamese cop shooting the Viet Cong in the head, which many experts believe, and I believe, was the end of the Vietnam War. That was it. It turned so many people against the war. One photograph, black and white, grainy photograph taken on a Nikon, changed the course of human events. That's a powerful photograph. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about photographs of what we do as commercial photographers, jewelry, beer shots, all of those things. Can you make it something even more special. And especially now that we have post-processing cooked into the pie. Used to be, you take the photograph on a sheet of Ektachrome or a frame of Ektachrome or Kodachrome or whatever it was, that was it. They could do a little bit, you know, when they made the separation, they might pull a little saturation or something, but that was it. Now when we shoot, we can actually plan our post-processing as part of the photograph. And I don't care if it's multi-image composites or just a straight photograph, we can plan our post to be a part of the image taking experience. When I photograph these days, well, when I photo for the last 30 years, when I make a photograph, when I've got the camera up to my eye, I see the finished print. I see the print, the touchable print. Even though I don't print as many pictures as I used to, that's still what I see in my head. The finished print, burned, dodged, vignetted, whatever. And I'm thinking, as I'm taking the photograph, I'm seeing this finished picture. So I'm already jumping ahead to the post-processing, knowing what I'm going to do. Does that mean that serendipity doesn't jump in there and change my mind? No. Sometimes you get in there on Photoshop or Lightroom and you're working your plan and you think, what if I do, if I just slide this, and something else comes your way. But you still started with a plan because you saw it in your head. You pushed yourself to make an image that was not just a snapshot or a capture of a moment or an event. One of the things I have the photographers do is to go out and do a street portrait. And the reason I call it a street portrait, it's not street photography, and it's not a voyeuristic photograph. It's not stand across the street with a 200mm lens and photograph that guy over in the shop who doesn't know they're being photographed. I mean intentionally going up to a stranger and asking them to take a photograph. And then I want the photographers to move them from where they are. Get comfortable with asking them to go, oh, thank you for, can I put you by this doorway? Now, we're not going to go, hey, can we walk across town to this cool bridge I saw? That's not the point. We're just going to move them a little bit out of the space. You know why we do that? Because we take control. And once we take control, we own the frame. It's ours. We put them in that doorway. We set them up. We are the photographer. We're not just letting chance happen. We are making that image. And it's quite a challenge. But it's what we have to do to make an image that is not cliche, that is not a snap or a grab shot. It's not what your next door neighbor would do with his Rebel and kit lens. It's not. We've changed it up for what we see up here. If we're not seeing stuff up here, then I think there are two things that we need to do more of. Number one, take a hell of a lot more pictures. And number two, look at a lot more pictures. We've got to become visually literate. Not just about photographers, the people who went before us, but about our own work, about the craft of photography. Become visually literate, and it'll help you make images that are more interesting in the long run, that captivate more, and push you farther and farther towards finding your own voice in photography. It'll be quite a challenge. It really is. But the harder you work, the more successful you become. It's magic, that is. See you tomorrow.